morning. Go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
May it please the court, counsel. Good morning. About a year ago, you're going to hear that Linda Murray and her husband, Hussein Murray, who would also go by the name Sam, were enjoying the fruits of their 54 years of marriage. They had raised a family. They were enjoying grandkids. Her husband, Sam, was still working on a regular basis at the two businesses that he had run for almost 3 decades. Down in Hamtramck, he had both a pawn shop and also a jewelry shop. And he would still go there on a regular basis. And you'll hear as the testimony comes in that that life that they were living and were expecting to continue to live came to an abrupt end starting on October 10th of 2024 when there was a knock on the door. And that knock on the door was at 10 p.m. And that knock on the door was with this defendant, Joshua Zuazo, and his co-defendant, Carlos Hernandez. Little did they know when that knock on the door came that their fate was about to be changed forever, and there was no going back. Linda Murray is going to testify this morning, and she's going to tell you that there was a knock at about 10 o'clock, and she's upstairs getting ready for bed, and her husband Sam is downstairs. And when that knock comes, they had a house that was set up with Ring cameras. And there's several Ring cameras around the house, and the Ring cameras also not only let you know somebody's there, but they also give you the video of what's going on at the knock on the door. So Sam goes to the door, and she's at the top of the stairs, and she'll tell you she could see what happens at the front door. And she'll tell you when the door opens, Defendant Hernandez and Defendant Zuazo are standing there, and they're dressed as DTE employees, and they are not DTE employees, but they're posing as DTE employees, and they want to get into the house. So they're saying, we're here because there's a gas leak, and we need to get in and check the house. And Linda's suspicion is up right away, and she yells down, it's kind of late for a gas leak check, isn't it? And her husband, Sam, has the door open, and Hernandez is still having a conversation about needing to check the gas. And Linda shouts down, Sam, do you have your gun on you? Because Sam, because of his businesses, because of the pawn shop, because of the jewelry, was licensed to carry a firearm and would carry a Glock on his right side. The conversation ends. Sam says, you're not coming in. It's too late. And then Hernandez says, well, we'll be back tomorrow. The door closes. They continue on with their night. You'll hear in the next morning that Linda has a doctor's appointment, and she goes to the doctor's appointment. She gets back to the house about 10 o'clock. When she gets to the house, Sam's already been cooking that morning because she's going to bring in food for his employees. It's a Friday now. And he often would cook for the employees, and he'd bring it in to share with them throughout the day so they had something to eat at lunchtime. Usually would go in around noon. So she gets in there, she starts cooking up breakfast for her and her husband. There's nobody else who lives at the house. It's just the two of them. So as she's doing that, Sam has already made the food. He's over in the family room. There's another knock on the door. And this time, when they go to the door, Linda's now on the first floor, and she cuts through between the kitchen and the front door, and she's looking towards the front door, and she can see that it's the same two guys who were there the night before. And she will identify Defendant Zuazo and Defendant Hernandez as the two guys who were there. You will see the Ring camera videos of all of these. And again, they want to come into the house. They have fake DTE badges. They come along with props like gas detector that you can buy on Amazon for $25, and they want to get in. This time, Sam lets them in to check for the gas. So as they come into the house, the gas that they want to check is going to be in the basement. So at first, Zuazo comes in and kind of lingers around. I think Linda thought he was going to go to the gas dryers. He doesn't. And then Hernandez Says something kind of strange, like, well, I forgot something out in the truck. So he disappears slightly, but she doesn't hear the alarm in the house beep. So she doesn't really believe he actually left the house to go out to the truck. And then you're going to hear that her husband, Sam, leads down into the basement. And you're going to hear that Zuazo is the first one to follow him down the stairs. And then Hernandez comes behind. And Hernandez closes the door. And that's the last time Linda ever saw her husband alive. She'll tell you that she's in the kitchen. She's doing breakfast. She hasn't finished it. It takes 10 to 15 minutes. She doesn't hear anything coming from the basement. She doesn't hear commotion. She doesn't hear screaming. She'll tell you, I believe, that her husband was a loud talker, and that for his age, he was a strong, physically fit guy. She doesn't hear anything. So as the door opens, up comes Hernandez first. Hernandez now, and you'll see the pictures between the entry, exit to the basement is very close to the kitchen. Hernandez is there, and he starts saying, where's the cash? Where's the safe? Where's the jewelry? It's like, we don't have a safe. I got cash in my purse. It's like, where's my husband? It's like, where's the cash? Where's your jewelry? Jewelry's in a safety deposit box. Where's my husband? And then you'll hear, up comes defendant Zuazo. And now she sees him at close range, and she sees blood on his shirt. And at that point in time, she starts screaming. She starts screaming, what happened to my husband? Where's my husband? And Zuazo says to her, he's sleeping. Then you're going to hear Hernandez, who is a huge human being. I think he's like 6'5", 450 pounds, hauls off and punches Linda on the left side of the face. She's then pushed by Hernandez.
Oh my gosh, I have to stop here. Did y'all just hear what this prosecutor in his opening statement said? He just called this man a huge human being. He said he about 450 pounds, about 6'5" tall. OMG. Did y'all hear that? What a way to describe somebody. I'm like, did he just say this about this man? All right. OMG.
Are you going to shut up? I'll stop screaming. At which point in time, he starts in the kitchen to bind her up with duct tape. At that point, where's your cash? In my purse. Starts going through a kitchen drawer. Where's your car keys? They're attached to the purse. And while that's going on, you'll hear defendant Zuazo doesn't leave the house. He doesn't go in the car. He doesn't drive away. He doesn't run down the street. Instead, what he does is he goes upstairs and ransacks the bedrooms up there looking for valuables. Goes into the master bedroom, which is completely ransacked. You'll see photos of it. Goes through the other bedrooms, and you'll see that there's a jewelry box that had her jewelry, which was valueless, costume jewelry. And one of the drawers from that jewelry box is taken. And you're also going to hear that defendant Hernandez does not go upstairs. Only defendant Zuazo goes upstairs. And in one of the bedrooms that he ransacks, you'll see that there's a blood smear on the wall. That blood smear, when it's tested by the Oakland County lab, come back to the victim, Sam Murray. He comes back down, time to go. So they exit through the garage. Now, they don't have a fob for the garage, so she says they're in there for a little bit, and she hears a huge boom, which is probably because the garage is disconnected. If you don't have a way to open it, you can disconnect it, pull it up, and pull it down. It comes crashing down. She hears it from inside the kitchen. She gets the ability to call the police because they take her cell phone on the house line, and the sheriff's office arrives. You'll see that body cam as soon as we start going with testimony this morning. And it's one of the things that we talked about in jury selection. there's a lot of officers who arrive. That's before they go into the basement. There's a lot more officers who arrive after they go into the basement. Because when you go into the basement, what you see is Sam is on the ground. It's a horrible scene, brutal scene, very bloody scene. The Emmy will tell you about the damage he sustained down in that basement, but you're going to see that his hands are duct taped, his feet are duct taped. They're also zip tied, other zip ties there. You'll see that the gun that would have been on his right side was gone, never found. And you'll hear what a brutal end to his life happened on that October 11th. You're going to hear how the investigation, because the Sheriff's Department with the Ring camera smartly and quickly released it to the media. And the media put it out on TV immediately, which was a great thing because they start getting tips. And as you'll see, it's not hard to see, Defendant Hernandez sticks out physically. So the focus quickly turned onto Defendant Hernandez and also Defendant Zuazo. You'll hear from a witness who worked with him, who says, I saw the video, I recognized him, I recognized what he was wearing from, that was what we used to wear at work. And so and I recognized his voice. So I knew who that was. So the Sheriff's Office quickly gets on to trying to track down where they are. Now, what is happening with the defendants at this point in time? Well, they're trying to destroy evidence. So you're going to hear that truck, which was a stolen truck that was stolen about 10 days before. You'll have that witness come in and say that the truck was in front of my house. It was our work truck. I went to bed at 11, it was there. I woke up at 5, it was gone. So he'll come in and say how that truck was stolen. One more layer of trying to get away with what happened on October 10th and 11th. Then you're going to hear that the plate that was on the truck was actually stolen from DTE itself. So if anyone was to have run it, say, is this a DTE truck? It would have actually come back to DTE because that plate was stolen. So that truck is taken down to Detroit. It's set on fire. You'll hear how the Detroit officers responded to the blaze. There's actually a photo of the truck on fire as that piece of evidence is trying to be destroyed. So the Sheriff's Department quickly starts, there's a thing called the flock system. It's used to be few places, now it's every place. Pretty soon, you're not gonna be able to drive without them being able to track your plate if they want to, because it photographs the plates. And they got him, Hernandez, going south. And they're also aware now that they've started their investigation that Hernandez has another residence that he uses down in Texas. So they put out a bulletin all the way down the trip, what they expect to be to Texas, and Louisiana on October 12th quickly comes in contact with them and pulls them over. They conduct a search warrant, and what you're going to hear they find in the vehicle that Hernandez is driving is the original license plate on the stolen truck that's designated POCO, because I think that's the company's name. That's in there. You're also going to hear that there are size 13 shoes, 3 pair of size 13 shoes. And on one of those pair of 13 shoes, there's blood. And when the lab tests that blood comes back to the victim, Sam Murray. You're also going to hear there's 1 pair of size 11 brown boots, not size 13, but size 11. There's also blood on that. Those boots also come back to the victim. Then you're going to hear that there's a bucket hat found in that, a bucket hat that is identified by witnesses as the defendant wearing on prior occasions. And then you're going to hear that as the investigation continued, the lab that was processing that scene comes up with DNA of both defendants on different items that were found at the scene and in the basement. As the case progresses, you're going to hear evidence that throughout this course of events, which started way before October 10th and 11th, Because as the investigation now focuses, you're going to hear that in fact, defendant Hernandez had gone to Mr. Murray's store almost a year earlier, back in October 2023, and he had pawned items there. And he's going to be identified by witnesses as being a guy who they remember coming into that store. By his size, he stuck out. They also have records of his pawn slips. And then you're going to hear how he came back in February of 2024 and was also at that store. This time at the store, horrible, horrible detail, but he actually asked to be introduced to the owner. And he was introduced face to face to the owner, Sam. And you'll hear that Sam would park his car at that building, open to the public. You could see his car, it's an older Audi. You could see that he would park his car outside the house in the driveway, so you could see if he's home or not home. So this was not random. This was not an accident. This was targeted. They did not give up after the first time, where a lot of folks might have said it didn't work. They may call DTE, they may call the cops. I'm not showing back up tomorrow. That doesn't happen. They're back on October 11th to finish that mission. And that mission was also planned by getting false DTA stickers for the side of the truck. This was well planned, well targeted, and ended horribly. And you'll hear, I think, at the conclusion of this case, and I think you'll come to the conclusion that they were in it together from before the 10th, the 11th, and after. All of these factors, I believe you'll find the defendant guilty as charged on all counts. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. The first thing I want to do this morning is to extend Mr. Zuazo's sincere thanks to each and every one of you who have set aside the business that you would have been attending to this week had you not been summoned to the Oakland County Courthouse to serve as a juror. And he has known about this case since the 18th day of October last year, when he was in custody and brought before a judge and advised at his arraignment of what the charges against him were. Very serious charges. First-degree felony murder for the death of Mr. Murray, and the unlawful imprisonment of Mr. Murray, and the unlawful imprisonment of Mrs. Murray. So since that day, the 18th day of October in 2024, Mr. Zuazo has been looking forward to this day. He didn't know when his trial would begin. He didn't know who among his fellow citizens would be summoned to the Oakland County Courthouse to serve as the triers of fact, the people who will determine the truth in this case. But he did know this, that once his case was presented before a group such as yourselves, that the truth would then be known. So he's been waiting for this day as his day of vindication. And it is for that reason that I extend his sincere thanks, as well as my own, for you all serving as jurors in this very serious matter. Now, the questions that you have to determine are all focused on Joshua Zuazo. You don't have to make any findings of fact as it affects the co-defendant, Mr. Hernandez. And that is as it should be. There's a separate jury that will deal with the facts associated with him. But because the allegations are that the two men worked in concert, or that at least this, and this is what I am prepared to concede today, is that Mr. Hernandez did not work alone. His jury will have to determine the facts regarding his case, but you sitting here taking in the evidence are not going to have any question in your mind whatsoever that the first person at the door to try and enter the Murray home on the night or during the night of October 10 of last year is Carlos Hernandez. as Mr. Petrofessa said just a few moments ago, and you all will see for yourselves in a little while when both juries are assembled and the testimony begins, he is a distinctive individual by his size. He's 6'5", or I read in one report, 6'6". When he was arrested in October of last year, he weighed 450 pounds. I don't know exactly what he weighs in at this time now, but the fact of the matter is a very big individual. Certainly one who stands out. And you'll see the ring videos, you'll have a feeling for a very good eye view of who the first person is. The question in this case is one of identification, as to all of you. Now, I understand what Mr. Petrofessa said, that he intends to present evidence, that people do, that would show that Mr. Zuazo is that second person. Your job is to determine whether he is correct, and has he proven that allegation of identification beyond a reasonable doubt. In the law, depending on the seriousness or the type of case there is, we have different measuring sticks by which different juries determine what is the truth. In a criminal case, that measuring stick is the highest burden of proof in the law, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You can't have, and Judge Polis has already given you a description of what a reasonable doubt is. She's going to instruct you on it again at the end. But I ask you to keep that in mind, because what your job as jurors is to scrutinize the evidence, listen carefully to it, and come to a conclusion that you are convinced is the correct one. Either that the people have failed to prove, or they did prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a serious obligation. And I'm sure when you received that summons, whenever that was, it said you had to be here this past Monday to serve as jurors, or at least potentially serve as jurors. You looked at it as not a wonderful opportunity to do some public service or civic duty, but as an interference in whatever it is that each of you would have been doing this week. But now, because you have taken that solemn oath that was administered to you on Monday afternoon, your job is to determine the truth. That's what a trial is. It's a search for the truth, and you all are the truth finders and determiners. So just along those lines, I want to tell you that if you let your mind wander while we are all gathered here together and start thinking about those things that you would be doing this week had you not been summoned and sworn in to serve as a juror, while the testimony is being presented or exhibits are being displayed, the evidence in the case, you're going to miss something. If you go this afternoon at lunchtime and have a excellent meal somewhere, and when we get into the afternoon session today or tomorrow or Friday or however long this trial lasts, and that meal starts to settle and your eyes become heavy and you start to drift off, you're going to miss something. Don't let that happen. This is serious business. And that oath that maybe went in one ear and out the other has real serious implications. And the reason for all that is, and the reason why it's so important that you listen, is because in the end, when all the evidence has been presented and the arguments of Mr. Petrofessa and myself have been presented, and Mr. Magaro, and Judge Polis has concluded giving you her final instructions on the law, 12 of you will be chosen to go back into that jury room where right now you can talk about anything except this, the only reason why we're all here together. And then begin your deliberations, your discussions about what the evidence is. And that's where paying attention is essential, because you can't honestly participate in those discussions if you weren't paying attention. And the way and the reason why, and even as wonderful as the United States is, we didn't come up with this idea of 12 people on a jury. That goes back to the old English common law, and it's been around for centuries longer than the United States has existed. And the reason it's done that way is because 12 people of differing life experiences and just knowledge of life in general sit down, they listen to what the evidence is, and then they all tell their different perspectives. And they engage with one another and come to a determination of the truth. And that's, while I am cross-examining witnesses and listening carefully to everything that goes on during the course of the trial, while Mr. McGarrell and Mr. Petrofessa are examining witnesses and doing exactly the same thing, you all will be sizing everybody up. One of the things that Judge Polis has already instructed you on, and she's going to instruct again, I'm pretty confident, at the conclusion of the trial, is listening to the witnesses. And I'm not going to say that any person who comes into this courtroom and takes an oath to tell you the truth, because I know who these witnesses are, and I've read what they've said in the past, and I have an understanding of what I expect you all are going to see. I'm not going to tell you that anybody's a liar. But one of the instruction you get on listening to witnesses is people can give testimony about what they think they saw, say it honestly because that's really what they believe, and still simply be wrong. You know, I am not a very good mathematician. I had trouble with that when I got to trigonometry. But I understand that, you know, we all understand 2 and 2 is 4. But a person can add up a column of numbers and get the wrong answer, think they're right. They answered it on their test paper because they thought it was correct, and simply be wrong. This information that you're going to hear during the course of this trial is traumatic, and it's disturbing. And as you sit through it, you are going to be traumatized yourself to a certain extent, because you're going to see some photographs that are pretty rough to look at of Mr. Murray, where he was found by the deputies that went to their home, the Murray home, and started their investigation. You're going to see Mrs. Murray testify. She herself is a victim of a crime. There's any question that this happened. It's a question of who did it. And the identification is the issue as it affects Joshua Zuazo. But you're going to see terrible things. Then it's hard to do that. And it's especially hard to do it when you're the trier of fact, because unlike anybody else, you are obligated to use cold-eyed calculation to determine the truth. You can't let sympathy or emotion enter into your decision-making about what the facts actually are. It's a hard job, and I don't envy you. And I know what all it is that you're going to see during the course of the next few days. So I can tell you right now from the beginning, it's pretty tough stuff. And that certainly wasn't something that you planned on having happen to you when you opened your mail on the day that your jury summons came. But I'm confident in each and every one of you. I don't know if you noticed, but I actively participated in the jury selection that we conducted on Monday. And I can assure you, if I didn't have that confidence as a fairly well-experienced attorney, you would not be occupying the seats where you find yourselves today. Now, I'm going to have, and I want you to just keep a couple of things in mind regarding this issue of identification. Well, the ring camera makes it really clear who the big fellow is. It doesn't really identify Mr. Zuazo. And there'll be quite a bit of questioning about that. The person, Kelly Broad, who says that, and I expect his testimony will be, because I have some knowledge of it, that he saw that ring video on television in the days immediately after this event took place. And he came forward and he made an identification of Mr. Zuazo. I will have a series of questions for him, and I ask you to listen with keen interest there because that's a really important thing. He's an essential witness in this case for the prosecution to establish that Mr. Zuazo is the person. And the question will be, and the one that I will raise in the end in my closing argument, is whether Kelly Broad is correct. This is an important and serious matter, and you want to see justice done. And I get that. But justice and retribution, they don't equal the same thing. And your job as jurors is to find what the real facts are and to make a determination regarding whether the correct person has been, and that is Joshua Zuazo, has been identified as the second man involved in this case. It isn't that it didn't happen. It isn't that it isn't a terrible crime, or they are all terrible crimes. But the question for you as Joshua Zuazo's jurors is whether he is the second man. And is he responsible for any of the crimes that were committed on October the 11th? I thank you for the attention you've paid so far. I know you'll pay attention during the course of the trial, and I look forward to getting my next opportunity to speak with you when I present my closing argument on behalf of Mr. Zuazo at the end of the evidence presentation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.